Clara Bertschi liked mornings before the church bells chimed 7, when Frauenbach's cobbled streets smelled of fresh brioche instead of tourists' coffee. She lifted the shutters of her watch repair shop, Bertschi & Co., and let the lavender-tinged mountain air curl around her small counters and ancient lathes. It was late September, season of golden light, and meticulously raked leaves, hardly a time for anything sinister. Yet the parcel waiting on her doorstep that day was padded with foreboding. No return address, only her name in fountain pen script. Inside she found a walnut box stamped with the faded crest of Hertig Frere, the defunct haute horlogerie firm whose abandoned factory loomed above the town like a dozing cat. The lid squeaked open to reveal a heavy wristwatch on a plum-coloured suede cushion. Its polished steel case glowed with unnerving perfection, but the dial had no brand, no numerals, only a single subdial at 6 o'clock, whose hand pointed at 1923:14. A countdown. Clara frowned. Everyone in Frauenbach knew the legend of the Hertig prototype, stolen 3 years earlier from the Cantonal Museum. Nothing had been heard of it since. If the watch in the box was genuine, someone had just dropped a hot coal into her life. She locked the shop door again, drew the curtains, and placed the watch on her bench under the loop lamp. The seconds ticked backward. 1922, 57, 56, 55. She spun off the back case. Instead of the expected hand-finished movement, a hybrid ensemble greeted her. Hertig's graceful bridges interlaced with newer parts, a quartz timing circuit, a migraine of micro-wiring, and, tucked beneath the rotor, a radio receiver no bigger than a postage stamp. "Who did this to you?" Clara murmured, half to the watch, half to herself. The doorbell clanged. She nearly dropped her screwdriver. Outside stood her neighbour, retired gendarme Oscar Vogel, wrapped in his eternal houndstooth scarf. "Morning, Frau Bertschi. You have the face of someone who swallowed a mainspring." Clara exhaled. "Come in, Herr Vogel, but wipe your shoes." Oscar perched on a stool while Clara poured coffee. She told him about the parcel, the countdown dial, and her suspicion that the device had been modified to receive a signal. He studied the watch with a jeweller's loop, eyebrows climbing. "This receiver is tuned to DCF-77, the atomic time transmitter from Germany. Someone is using a global signal to synchronize it. But why the countdown?" Clara's apprentice, Lea Rossi, burst through the back door at that moment, ponytail wagging. "I heard voices. Also, Frau Jeanne at the bakery says the police were outside La Couronne last night. Another robbery. 2 ruby necklaces gone." Oscar straightened. "What time?" "Around midnight, they say." Clara glanced at the subdial. 18:43:7. A chill trickled down her arms. 24 hours ago, this countdown would have read 42:37. 24 hours before that, La Couronne was hit. Oscar tapped the case with a finger. "Are you suggesting this watch counts down to crimes? Or rather, someone programs it to, and then passes it along as a twisted calling card," Clara said. "The question is, why send it to me?" Oscar looked at the walnut box again. "Maybe they want you to see if you can stop the next one." Or to frame me, Clara thought. A distant diesel horn blew 3 times, the tourist train climbing from Neuchâtel. Clara's gaze drifted to the poster in her shop window, advertising the upcoming Horological Heritage Festival. Tomorrow evening, Hertig's old factory would reopen as a temporary exhibition hall, filled with priceless timepieces loaned from collectors across Europe. The whole town was buzzing. She looked again at the watch. 18:39:12, 11:10. 18.5 hours from now, she whispered. That lands exactly at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Leia fetched the festival program and leafed through. 9:30 is when the security company hands the exhibition rooms over to the museum staff for final checks. The pieces will be inside, but the alarm system's still in transition. Oscar nodded slowly. Prime moment for a theft, and the world will be looking at Frauenbach. Clara felt the gears in her own mind mesh. If they alerted the cantonal police without proof, the festival might get cancelled, and women like Frau Jean would lose weeks of income. But doing nothing was unthinkable. "I want to know how the watch receives its countdown times," she said. "If we trace the signal, we find our thieves." She flipped the movement over her solder mat and scanned for identifiers. A minuscule signature caught her eye, a capital H inside a gear, Hertig's hallmark, but next to it, laser-etched, the initials RH, Reinhard Holden. Clara's throat tightened. Holden was the charming chairman of the Heritage Festival Committee, a man with silver hair and a predilection for rare pocket watches. He'd courted Clara to curate one of the display rooms. He had keys, schematics, influence, and apparently a talent for micro-soldering. "But we still have only a hint," Oscar cautioned. "Initials can be forged. We need surveillance, witnesses." Clara cracked a humorless smile. "Luckily, I know my way around the old factory." Past midnight, a half-moon skimmed the Jura peaks. Clara, Oscar, and Leia slipped through a side gate at the factory grounds. Ivy smothered the brick walls, and windows gaped like missing teeth. Yet inside, modern spotlights already illuminated stands draped in linen, awaiting their treasures. Clara's childhood memories of this place, her grandfather's last workplace, flooded back. The oil scent, the staccato of escapements being tested. She felt his ghost at her elbow, approving or judging. They crept toward the exhibition hall's electrical room. Oscar's old gendarme credentials had secured them temporary passes to double-check humidity controls, but they preferred stealth. Leia produced a tiny spectrum analyzer from her backpack. She flicked it on and watched a squiggling green line. "It's quiet here," she whispered. "No radio spike." Clara checked the watch, 11:02:15. They prowled through corridors, passing crates labelled Breguet, Patek, Vacheron. Each one represented fortunes. Yet if the thieves aimed only for watches, why the countdown for jewellery heists at La Couronne, and, weeks earlier, for an armoured van burglary in Bern? The pattern, Clara sensed, was broader. In the central atrium, scaffolds surrounded the grand clock tower. A silhouette stood atop a plank, tinkering with the tower mechanism. Clara's pulse thudded. The man's posture, straight, precise, was unmistakable even before moonlight touched his face. Reinhard Holden. He wore gloves and held a small transmitter the size of a chocolate bar. Antenna wires dangled like spider silk over the gears. With a last adjustment, Holden snapped the tower face closed and descended the scaffolding. Clara motioned Oscar and Leia into the shadow of a display plinth. When Holden's footsteps faded, they scurried to the scaffold base. Leia swept the analyzer. This time the screen flared, 77.5 kHz, the DCF-77 frequency, but stronger, locally rebroadcast. "He's piggybacking the atomic signal," Leia breathed, "overlaying his own timestamp so the watch tunes to it. Genius. Diabolical, but genius." Clara's anger burned. He can inject any time he likes, maybe even trigger multiple watches carried by his accomplices. Oscar pulled out his notebook. "He leaves the device here tonight, emits the countdown at the critical window, then his crew moves in. We need hard evidence and the police on standby." Clara nodded. "And we need the watch to keep listening so we can record the injected signal." I have an idea, but it means a bit of horological sabotage. At 6 the next morning, Frauenbach buzzed with festival excitement. Calliope music wafted through streets lined with bunting. Clara had slept 2 hours, but felt electrically awake. The watch showed 03:56:07. In her coat pocket now lay a second object, a modified movement she and Leia had built during the night, fitted with an SD card recorder. They entered the factory openly this time, ID badges swinging. Volunteers bustled about, polishing glass. Holden strode the atrium floor like a proud maestro. He greeted Clara with a warm smile that made her stomach lurch. "Ah, Frau Becci, I counted on your early visit. The Montreux minute repeater has just arrived. I hope you'll approve its placement." "I'm sure it will be perfect," she said, managing to keep her voice steady. "By the way, I believe I have something that belongs in our Innovations of the Future cabinet." She produced the stolen prototype. Holden's pupils flicked wide. "My dear, where did you obtain—" "It was anonymously delivered, as you know." She opened the back, the rotor gleaming. "I adjusted the timing module. Thought the public might appreciate seeing Hertig's last experiment." Holden forced a laugh that sounded like a gear slipping teeth. "Marvelous. Allow me to lock it in the cabinet myself. Security is paramount." "Of course," Clara said. "I'll fetch the curator to log it." She handed him the watch, waiting until his fingers clasped the case, transferring not only metal, but the micro-recorder hidden under the rotor bridge. Holden walked off with brisk confidence, unaware. Oscar approached, earpiece in place. "Cantonal task force is discreetly stationed 2 streets over. They'll roll in if we confirm the heist attempt." "Good," Clara said. "We have under 3 hours to capture Holden's broadcast and expose him." 9:30 arrived with Alpine punctuality. Visitors queued outside for the 10 o'clock opening. Inside, Holden did last-minute rounds, checking locks and lights. Clara loitered near the scaffold base, phone connected via Bluetooth to the watch's recorder, spying on the spy. At 09:32:10, a chirp sounded in her earpiece. Digital packets, the countdown feed. Leia, monitoring her analyzer in the lobby, muttered, "Signal strength peaking, recording." Exactly 60 seconds later, the watch's hidden subdial, now inside the Innovations cabinet, should have begun a fresh countdown. Clara prayed the recorder would capture both feed and mechanical response. Suddenly, distant thuds shook the building, metal doors slamming. The lights flickered. Visitors screamed as shutters crashed over every exit. Pneumatic locks hissed. Holden's voice blared from the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, remain calm. A temporary security malfunction. Please await instructions." Oscar cursed into his mic. "He's sealing the place." Clara darted toward the cabinet room. Through the glass doors, she saw Holden and 2 masked men in grey overalls loading velvet-lined cases into rucksacks. Holden removed the back of the prototype watch, extracted the SD card, and smashed it under his heel, oblivious to the identical recorder Clara had taped inside the case of the Montreux repeater 3 feet away. "We need the police now," she whispered. But the radio hissed. Jammers. Oscar rattled the emergency exit bars. No give. Clara's mind spun. The factory's central hall was once a shipping bay connected to the river by an underground funicular tunnel. If Holden preserved that route, he'd flee with the loot beneath the town, while everyone topside scrambled at locked doors. She hurried to the old blueprint framed near reception. The funicular shaft ran past the tooling workshop, now the festival archive room. "Oscar, follow me." They dashed through dusty corridors to the archive. Inside, crates towered like city blocks. The far wall concealed a steel trapdoor, freshly oiled. He planned everything, Oscar said. Clara gripped the wheel lock. Help me. Together they heaved the door open. Cold air rushed up the shaft. In the blackness below, flashlights bobbed, Holden's crew descending with bags of timepieces. Leia ran in. The main stairwell is blocked by shutters. I saw them pull fiber cables. They've blacked out cellular. Have you found a way? Clara pointed down. Yes, but we go carefully. They clipped headlamps on and followed the spiral stairs, metal groaning underfoot. The smell of dank stone intensified. At the base, rails disappeared into a tunnel lit only by Holden's retreating torch. Oscar drew a lightweight revolver, an old service weapon he'd hoped never to use again. I'll stall them. You two gather evidence. Clara laid a hand on his arm. No heroics. We just need them detained until police cut the shutters. They crept along the narrow plank walkway beside the rails. Voices echoed ahead. 4 minutes to pick up, Holden barked. Leia set her phone to record. Clara, spotting a breaker panel on the wall, had an idea. She opened it. Inside, fuses still powered ventilation fans. If we blow the breakers, smoke detectors upstairs will think there's a fire. The shutters are designed to lift automatically for evacuation. Oscar grinned. Let's make the building sneeze. Leia rummaged for a wire and a battery pack. Within seconds, she sparked a connection. The fans halted. Stale dust belched from vents. Above, a shrill alarm wailed through the shaft. Motorized shutters clanked upward. Holden's flashlight whipped around. What now? Oscar stepped from the shadows, revolver steady. Drop the bags, Herr Holden. Show's over. Holden's 2 accomplices froze. But Holden smirked and produced a pocket chronograph. He pressed a pusher. An unseen engine coughed alive down the tunnel, the old funicular carriage. It lurched forward, barreling toward them. Clara yanked Oscar back as the wooden cab screeched past, sparks flying. Holden dove inside with one bag and slammed the gate, leaving his men stranded. "Coward!" one yelled. The carriage rattled toward the river exit. Clara sprinted to a maintenance trolley parked on a siding. "Help me push!" She and Leia shoved it onto the rails. Oscar leapt aboard, grabbing a handbrake. Down the slope they sped, wind howling. Clara's heartbeat pounded in her ears as tunnel walls blurred. Ahead, moonlight spilled through an opening where the river glimmered. The funicular cab slowed, brakes squealing, but still reached the open air seconds before their trolley. Holden jumped onto the quay, heaving the bag toward a waiting speedboat. A pilot reached to grab it. Clara vaulted off the trolley, slipped on moss, and collided with Holden. Both tumbled. The bag burst, disgorging tourbillons, gem-set bezels, and the Hurtig prototype, which skittered across cobblestones into the water with a mournful plop. Holden scrambled, but Clara seized his wrist, twisting. Oscar arrived, revolver aimed. The speedboat pilot gunned the engine, panicked, and fled downriver alone. Holden sagged under Oscar's grip. Sirens pierced the morning as cantonal police vehicles screeched onto the quay. Someone upstairs had called them the moment shutters rose. Clara knelt, catching her breath. Leia joined her, holding the Montreux repeater case. "Recorder intact. We have Holden's entire pirate broadcast." Clara managed a grin. "Then we've wound this affair down." A week later, Frauenbach basked in an unusually warm autumn sun. The festival reopened, salvaged exhibits shining brighter for having been spared. Children posed with cardboard gear crowns. bakers sold commemorative pastries shaped like escapements. Clara sat outside Café Müller with Oscar and Leia, nursing a hot chocolate. Newspapers hailed the trio as guardians of Swiss time. Holden and his accomplices faced a choir of charges: theft, sabotage, conspiracy. The police recovered all but 2 minor pieces, sadly including the Hertig prototype, lost to the river's depths. Oscar toasted with mineral water. To Clara, whose courage kept Frauenbach ticking, she blushed. To teamwork and to curiosity, the mainspring of every mystery. Leia set a small parcel on the table. Speaking of mysteries, this arrived for you this morning? No return address. Clara hesitated, then opened it. Inside lay the Hertig prototype, damp but running, ticking a steady forward rhythm. A note read, pulled from the river before the police came: "Your town deserves its heart back. Enjoy the watch, counting up, not down." No signature, only a tiny stamped gear. Clara looked at her friends, astonished. Somewhere another watchmaker, or perhaps a contrite thief, had decided to right a wrong. She wound the crown gently, listening to the beat that had lured her into peril and led her out again. Frauenbach's church bells chimed 11. Life, like a good movement, resumed its cadence, and Clara Bertschi, surrounded by ticking wonders and warm brioche smells, felt time settle comfortably, if only until the next unsettling parcel.